Okay, day 15. I'm reading Reader Come Home by Marianne Wolf. This is page 58. Deep reading's analytical processes. Without concepts, there can be no thought, and without analogies, there can be no concepts. Analogy is the fuel and fire of thinking. Douglas Hofstadter and Emmanuel Sander. It is highly coincidental that what we think of as the method of science characterizes many of the most sophisticated cognitive processes we deploy during deep reading. Getting to the truth of thinking, whether in science, in life, or in text, requires observation, hypothesis, and predictions based on the inference and deductions, testing and evaluation, interpretation and conclusion, and when possible, new proof of these conclusions through their replication. During the first milliseconds of reading, we gather together what we perceive, integrating our observations. Analogical reading, as the cognitive scientist Douglas Hofstadter has written, provides the great bridge between what we see and what we know, background knowledge, and drives us to form new concepts and hypotheses. These hypotheses help guide the application of inferential capacities, such as deduction and induction, and in due course lead to the evaluation and critical analysis of what we think our observation and inferences mean. From these, we draw interpretations of all that went before, and if more fortunate, come to conclusions that lead to bursts of insight. There are both poetry and science at the heart of reading. Just which of scientific methods are deployed largely depends on the reader's expertise and the content being read. If we are reading a scientific article on mirror neurons in the motor system by the neuroscientist Leonardo Fogassi from Parma, for instance, we will need to evaluate whether the concepts, hypotheses, and findings presented build on past evidence, whether verifiable methods of evaluations are used that can be replicated, and whether the conclusions and interpretations match the data provided. In the process, we use a veritable armamentarium of analogical, inferential, and analytical processes, and we learn a great deal from Professor Fogassi that adds to our future background knowledge. Analogy and inference. So, on the other hand, if we are reading a poem by Wallace Stevens or an essay by the contemporary philosopher Mark Grieve in Against Everything, we might well use different forms of inference, as well as a more nuanced range of emotions than when we are reading. Well, about motor neurons. Reading, at least all deep reading, requires the use of analogical reading and inference if we are to uncover the multiple layers of meaning in what we read. In beginning, one of Grieve's philosophical excavations into what we do in our ordinary lives and why, I confronted the obvious and less obvious reasons why I exercise. I wouldn't want to spend a minute in the gym of Grieve's observations, where the grunts, moans, and pyrotechnics of wannabe Amazons and Prometheans could make anyone be against anything they are doing. But I don't look at exercise that way, which is grief's beautifully subversively rendered point. To use an examination of our most basic activities and motives to get us to think about what we do with our one wild and precious life. Grief's rants, only seemingly against everything, are a powerful example of how analogical thought and inferential reasoning help us comprehend what lies beneath the surface of the increasingly complex world he examines. The more we know, the more we can draw analogies, and the more we can use those analogies to infer, deduce, and analyze and evaluate our past assumptions, all of which increases and refines our growing internal platform of knowledge. The converse is equally true, with harsh implications for our present and future society. The less we know, the fewer possibilities we have for drawing analogies, for increasing our inferential and analytical powers, and for expanding and applying our general knowledge. Converse. Sherlock Holmes provides. No. I better stop here. So, thanks so much. This is Minky, and please correct me if you can. Thank you.